Good day everyone, especially to our instructor, Mr. Alvin Tamintuan, sir. I am Mary Grace F. Bacani, one of the Group 1, and today we're going to tackle about the different classifications of assessment. So guys, these are the different classifications of assessment. Number 1 is purpose, and under the purpose we have here the two types, which is the educational and psychological tests. Number 2 classification of assessment is form, and then under the form we have here the paper and pencil and performance based. Number 3 classification is according to its function. And then we have here the two types, which is the teacher-made and standardized. And then another classifications of assessment is kind of learning, which is the achievement and aptitude. And then another one is the ability. Under the ability, we have here the speed and power. Another classifications of assessment is the interpretation of learning, which is the non-reference and the criterion reference. So guys, we already know what are the 7 classifications of assessment. So I am going to discuss to you now each classifications. We have here the first purpose. So under the purpose, we have the two types, the educational and psychological tests. So what do you mean by educational assessment? Educational assessment is used in the school setting for the purpose of tracking the growth of learners and grading their performance. The examples for that are the formative test and then the summative test. So what do you mean by that? If a teacher gives a test, or let's say a quiz with the students in order to measure how much they have learned of the topic, then that particular test or a topic is considered as an educational assessment because it tries to measure the students' understanding and the students' mastery of the subject matter. So, go with the formative test wherein the teacher administered this type of test in order to make sure that the students are learning about the topic. So, all these tests, formative and summative tests, are considered as an educational assessment test because in the first place, they are used to track and growth. They are used to track the growth of the learners and grading their performance, and besides, it is used in the school settings. So another types of the purpose is the psychological assessment. So what do you mean by psychological? The psychological are measures that determine the learner's cognitive and non-cognitive characteristics. So the examples for that are for cognitive measures and for affective measures. So when we say for cognitive measures, it is a test for ability, aptitude, and critical thinking, referring to the student's belief and thoughts. And then for affective measures, it is tests for personality, motivation, attitude, interest, and disposition. It is referring to the feelings and emotions. So, psychological means it's a test in the mind of the students, the behavior. So, these tests are considered as psychological because they measure the mental processes of students' behavior, including the motivation, reasoning, or perception. The psychological assessment is not a part of the teacher's data or basis in grading the students. So, unlike educational assessment, psychological is only used to measure the student's personality and behavior. So, now guys, we will proceed to the second classification of assessment, which is the form. So, under the form, we have here the two types, the paper and pencil and the performance based. So, when we say the paper and pencil assessments are cognitive tasks that require a single correct answer. So, example, the binary true or false, short answer, identification, matching type, multiple choice tests. So these are called paper and pencil tests because, of course, this is the test that is using a paper and pencil. But the main essence of this test is only to regenerate a single correct answer. So in binary, if it is true, it's false. Of course, it's not true. So it is an objective test that requires only one correct answer from their students. So we have here another type, which is the performance-based assessment. So when we say performance-based assessments, it requires learners to perform tasks such as demonstrations, arrive at product, show strategies, and present information. So in the performance-based assessment, students requires to do something or demonstrate something to show to the teachers their skills. So we have here the examples. The first one is the writing an essay, reporting in front of the class, reciting a poem, demonstrating how a problem solved. So as we can see, writing an essay, of course in this case we are also using a paper and pencil, but in the writing an essay, students have to organize their thoughts and opinion, and that one is not require just one single correct answer. So of course the paper and pencil required only one single correct answer. So unlike the performance-based assessment. So reporting, reciting, and demonstrating how a problem solve. Of course, in this issue, students requires action to show their skills. And from the word itself, performance, they are performing an action to show their skills. And then now, the number 3 classifications of assessment is the function. And then under the function, we have here the 2 types, which is the teacher-made and standardized. So when we say that teacher-made tests are usually intended for classroom assessment. This is basically the teachers-made tests are simply tests or designed by teacher in order to assess the students. It is relies upon the skill of 1 or 2 teachers only. So, ibig sabihin, ito yung test na ginagawa lamang ng guro para sa mga estudyante sa loob ng classroom. Tungkol lang ito sa topic na pinag-aralan nila in that particular subject. For examples are quizzes, long test, exams, like that. Another one is the standardized test. Standardized tests have fixed direction for administering and scoring. They can be purchased with test manuals, booklets, and answer sheets. It is a test developed by the writers, reviewers, and editor. So examples are the Metropolitan Achievement Test, licensure exams. So meaning to say, the standardized tests need to undergo scientific and systematic process. The test makers have to analyze the validity of the test, the reliability of the test. This is to perform the test to assure that the test is a standardized test. From the word itself, standardized meaning it has passed based on the standard in crafting the test. If it has its own scoring scheme and it has test manuals, booklets, and answer sheets. So guys, now we will proceed to the another classifications of assessment, which is the kinds of learning. So we have here the 2 types, which is the achievement and aptitude test. So when we say achievement assessment or achievement test, it is measures what learners have learned after instruction or after going through a specific curricular program. They provide information on what learners can do and have acquired after training and instruction. So meaning to say, the achievement is really administered the students in order to get or to know how much the students had achieved. after the particular series of training or instructions. The examples of that is the National Achievement Test or the NAT. So the NAT, in elementary, the NAT is administered to grade 6 students. So all the test questions under the NAT are the accumulative competencies being discussed from grade 1 to grade 6. This is to check the students learn from grade 1 to grade 6. So another types of the kinds of learning is the aptitude assessment or aptitude test. So when we say aptitude test, it is a measure the characteristics that influence a person's behavior that aid goal attainment in a particular situation. So ibig sabihin, ito ay isang test na ginagamit upang matukoy ang kakayahan at ang interes ng isang mag-aaral o estudyante. Maaaring gawin ang aptitude test para matulungang magdesisyon ang isang estudyante para sa nababagay na kurso o karera batay sa kanilang interes. So doon ma-measure kung saan sila magaling o kung saan mas interesado ang isang estudyante. So ang example ng aptitude assessment or aptitude test are the cognitive abilities measurement or the NCAE. So dito ma-measure kung saan talaga yung interest ng estudyante, kung saan yung mas gusto niyang sundang landas base sa kanyang mga resulta sa test. So now we will proceed to the another classification of assessment, which is the ability. So under the ability, we have here the two types, which is the speed and power. So when we say speed test, it is consists of easy items that need to be completed within a time limit. So for example is the typing test. So in the typing test in the computer, of course, with the time limit. So power test, it is consists of items with increasing level of difficulty, but time is sufficient to complete the whole test. So examples, test developed by the National Councils of Teachers of Mathematics. So the speed test measure the student how fast to perform the particular skills, and then the power test measures how the intellectual ability of the students that contains an increasing level of test. As the level increases, the difficulty to answer the test is also increases. For example, yung level 1 na so lumampas na siya sa level 1, pupunta siya sa level 2. And then pag nalampasan niya yung level 2, may level 3. So as the level increases, the difficulty to answer the test is also increases. So we have last but not the least classifications of assessment, the interpretation of learning. And then under the interpretation of learning, we have two types, which is the norm reference and the criterion reference. So when we say norm reference assessment, it is interpret results using distribution of scores of a sample group. The mean and standards deviations are computed for the group. The standing of every individual is the norm reference test is based on how far they are from the mean and the standard deviation of the sample. So if the teacher compares the scores of the students to other students, then he is interpreting the scores based on the norm reference assessments. So if the teacher ranking the scores of the students from highest to lowest, for example, the student A to B student A to student B until the end. So norm meaning sample group of students. And then the another types of the interpretation of learning is the criterion reference. Criterion reference have a given set of standards and the scores are compared to the given criterion. So in this types criterion reference, the teachers setting standards and the scores are compared to the given criterion. Kumbaga, may bracket siya. For example, in a 50 items test, 40 to 50 is very high, 30 to 39 is high, 20 to 29 is average, 10 to 19 is low, and 0 to 9 is very low. Kung ang norm reference assessment, they are comparing the students to other students. Here in the criterion reference, there's a bracket where they can compare the scores because the scores of the students are compared to the given criterion. So thank you guys.